Hey everyone, today I wanted to share with you some common problems I see in beginner crocheters. I've taught crochet to many students over the years, and these are the beginner mistakes I see the most. They fall into three categories: good form, counting, and tension. So let's look at these mistakes. So, not keeping your fingers close to the hook. Good form is keeping your fingers very close to the tip of the crochet hook and your yarn. Beginner crocheters sometimes have this mistake where they hold the hook somewhere over here and they have the yarn like this, and then they end up with this flipping situation where they can't have control over the work. We want to keep our fingers very close to the yarn at all times. I'm going to demonstrate how I teach beginner crocheters. We need to have the yarn in the middle barrel of the hook. We keep pointing finger on top of that to create dexterity. We're holding our fingers very, very close like this. So we insert our hook, yarn over, grab everything very close, pull through, yarn over again like that. Because again, if you have your hands far away, I always see students doing this where it flips around and they can't understand why. And it's because we're not stabilizing the yarn with this finger. I'm always holding this in one way or another. So that stabilizes, and then we're holding very close up here. If your fingers are close to the hook, you have so much more control. So I'm able to control my tension, and the yarn and hook are doing what I want it to do, not the other way around. And then this ties into another problem with that twisting around. And I refer to it as grabbing the knot. But basically, when you yarn over, you stabilize with your pointer finger, yarn over, position this tail between these two fingers, twist your hand forward, and then we insert our nail in between those two stitches so that you're as close as possible to the hook. And then you're able to get that hook through very easily. So I'll demonstrate again. Yarn over, stabilize, flip around, and then you grab the knot, which is the stitch below, so that then you don't have that flipping around. And I'll show you what that looks like on a chain, because that's also where students have a lot of difficulty. The chain row is always the hardest. So we have a chain here, and we're going to hold the yarn in the middle part of the hook right here. We're going to insert the hook, but I'm still holding this. It is going to slide a little. I'm going to insert my hook. Now I'm going to stabilize both loops with my pointer finger. I'm going to yarn over, clip this yarn between these two fingers, twist my hand, and everything is very, very close. It's all actually touching the hook. And then what I refer to as grab the knot, you're grabbing the chain below and you're pulling so that you have room. You pull through one, yarn over, and again, pulling down, pull through two. And that first stitch always looks a little weird with this big loop. But again, now I'm stabilizing with this finger, insert. Now I'm holding both loops with my pointer finger, yarn over, stabilize, twist your hand, pull down, yarn over, pull down again. And we would continue doing this all the way across. And as you become more advanced, you don't have to do such deliberate movements. You can just sort of loop it over naturally with your fingers. But for the beginning, I really teach this very deliberate movement, and it makes it a lot easier for students. Because again, if you don't grip the knot, what's going to happen is, say you yarn over, and then students will you get like this bunchy thing up here, the yarn is splitting. It's very hard to get that in to the chain. Then I yarn over. I'm able to do this only because I've been crocheting for many years, but if you don't grip that, I can't even do it myself. It's just a mess. So again, you want to have that really good form where you are creating a space in the stitches. The next common issue I see is students not turning their hook when it's necessary. I'm stabilizing with this pointer finger. I'm inserting into the next stitch, yarn over. And then when you pull the yarn through, you have to twist down to be able to get it to go through. Students will sometimes insert the hook, yarn over, and then they have the hook maybe facing this way or up, and it gets caught where the hook is not only grabbing our yarn here, but it's also grabbing the stitch that they're trying to pull through. You stabilize with this pointer finger, insert into the next hook, stabilize both loops with your pointer finger, yarn over. Again, you clip the yarn, twist your hand, and then the hook is facing you and you slowly begin to slide. Once this loop touches the hook, we twist down, and then this ties into grabbing the knot, pull down on this stitch to create that space, and then pull through. So if you don't twist the hook down, you're going to get caught like this. So again, you're pulling, twist down, pull through, yarn over, and again, twist down. So we always want to twist down. And as you become more advanced, you can change how you do this. But for beginners, twisting down works almost every single time. The next issue that I see a lot is students will create a chain that's entirely too tight. And one of the ways they do this is you always want your loop in the middle part of your hook. This part is your tension. This creates the size. So this is a 4mm hook. This is going to create a 4mm size stitch. If you do your stitches over here where it tapers down and it gets skinny, your chains are going to be too thin. So I'm going to try to make some very tight chains to demonstrate what happens here. Okay, this is really hard for me to do. Okay, so students will do this and they think, oh, it looks so beautiful. It's so tight. It's like a perfect braid. But what's going to happen is when I try to get the hook into the next stitch, it's going to be very tight, and then these stitches aren't going to look right. Your stitches are going to be a larger size than your chain, so you're also going to end up with a fanning out effect, which actually I'm going to show you is another problem. It's very miserable crocheting like this. It doesn't look nice. It looks really ugly, and it doesn't show what the yarn is supposed to actually look like. How do we avoid this problem? I'm always keeping my yarn in that middle section of the hook, and I, stabilize it with my pointer finger. And I'm going to make extra large chains. It's always better to have the problem with too loose of a tension than too tight of a tension when you're a beginner. Tension is something that just comes with time, but you're always better off being loose than tight. And so I'm overcompensating by when I yarn over and I pull this through, I then give the hook a little pull to give myself some extra space. So I have like that much space between the hook and my chains. And then when I go into my first row here, it's not going to be as hard. So I'm just going to go across like this, and it just makes life a lot easier. The next issue is this fanning out effect, where instead of creating a rectangle, the work fans out. And this happens for two reasons. One, the chain might be too tight, like we discussed in the previous issue, or you're putting too many stitches into your rows. And this usually happens on the end stitches. Sometimes students will, by accident, put 2 stitches at the end. The end is always most difficult to figure out when you're a beginner. So I have my end stitch here. I'm going to put 1 stitch, and I'm going to show you where sometimes students put another stitch by accident. So I did my 1. Then students will see this right here, and they'll go into that, and they'll put an extra stitch in there by accident. And now you can see how this edge is no longer straight. This is a fanned effect. And the way to deal with this is by always counting your stitches. I'm going to start with a chain of 11 because I want to have 10 stitches. I need to skip the first chain. So now I'm going to count 10 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Now, let's say I'm a beginner and I'm like, I'm not sure where that last stitch goes. Well, I've already counted 9, so I know I need a 10th, and I know that it's got to be jammed in here somewhere. So I'm going to make my 10. So 10. Then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to do the next row. And again, I'm going to make sure that I have 10. I tell students to just count it out in advance. Don't just start stitching if you're not sure where you need to go. Let's say I wanted to put my first stitch by accident in here, which is incorrect. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, so that can't be right. So now let's count the next one. So let's do it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Counting is really important in crochet, especially if you're a beginner. I remember when I was a kid, I would just sit for hours and hours and I would just count and count and count my rows. I was a kid. I had a lot of time on my hands. Maybe as an adult, that seems annoying to have to do, but it really worked and it made me fix the issue with figuring out where the end stitches go. And this brings us to the last issue with beginner crocheting, and that's tension. This comes with time and practice. It's okay if your tension is uneven. If you keep practicing good form, the tension will eventually come. And so that's this whole thing that I was saying about stabilizing your stitches, pulling from the knot. That will help tremendously. Make sure your chain row is extra loose, even if it looks weird or feels uncomfortable at first. You're always better being loose than tight. Keep track of your stitch count and always keep an eye on those edge stitches that you're not either adding or skipping a stitch by accident. I hope this addressed any issues you've had as a beginner crocheter. If you have any tips for beginners, please share. These are all things that I've based on experience with my students, and they're not overnight fixes. But the things that I've shared today did help them a lot, and many of them moved on to become very successful and advanced crocheters. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.